At Investor Central, I'm Mark Lowdy. You know, the financial markets are in such a state these days, you might be forgiven for thinking you're going to swear off investing altogether. Best stay out of the market and keep the money under a mattress. But as our guest today will tell you, that's probably not an option either. David Gerald is the President and Chief Executive of the Securities Investors Association of Singapore. Mr. Gerald, a lot of the people watching this may not be entirely familiar with how your organisation came about in the first place.
Yes.
You came about largely because you were solving problems for investors who wanted to get their money out of investments. So when we're in the market the way it is at the moment, you might be thinking, well, probably better not to go into it at all.
Yes.
Is that a realistic thing to say, though?
For the weak-hearted and the ones who cannot stomach it, if you stomach losses, they will stay out. Stay out, keep the money in the bank. And what does the bank give you? Very little.
Pittance, you could say, less than 1%. You have to have $1 million just to get 1%.
And it doesn't give you enough to even buy a cup of coffee these days. So what do? I mean, you're a young person, you need to talk about or think about planning your future. There's a lot to think about and plan about, right? So you need to have money. So now the markets are providing tremendous opportunities. I call it the great sale in the Singapore markets.
Oh, really?
Yes.
The GSS for the
GSS,
the SGX.
Right, it is. Now, many of the blue chips are down and at a discount. If you really study these opportunities, you will find that you could pick up at a very, very good discount. And this is the way to start investing. You buy at a very low price, and then you wait for the opportunity for these stocks, I'm talking about stocks now, to climb up to a level that will give you a handsome return. A stock that was, let's say, $8.70, $8.60 is now, 6 something. So there's a lot of opportunities. A stock that was $11 is now, 6 something.
Are you thinking of any particular companies?
No, I will not say.
But by way of example?
No, because I'm not going to talk about recommendations because I don't have the license, but as an association we tell our members to look out for instruments, investment instruments that will give them a good return. Now, to begin with, you've got to ask yourself who you are, all right? You've got to ask yourself, who am I? Am I a person who can take risks? What type of risks? How much risk must I take, and how much risk should I take? And if you are a person who cannot take risks, then you've got to go for those, instruments that will have very little or no risks, and that is fixed deposits, right? Every investment has got a risks. So question is, if you want bigger returns, faster returns, you will find the risks are very, very high, to the extent that you can wipe out your whole investment. So if you cannot afford to do that, do not dabble with any instrument that would pose this difficulty for you. So if you're one of those who get the palpitation in your heart, or if you get a gastritis, forget it, all right? But if you're one of those who've got a lot of money and is not earning enough returns for you, but you do want to invest for good returns, you plan your investment according to the type of instruments that you can choose that will be suitable for you. The investment must be suitable to your risk appetite, all right? I'm one of those who can wait on it for 10 years, all right? I don't mind waiting 10 years, and I don't need the money. All right, so I'll choose the investment instruments according to my risk appetite, according to the suitability of the instrument to my risk appetite.
Yes, and risk appetite, the funny thing, Mr. Gerald, is that closely associated with risk appetite is overconfidence.
Yes.
One thing that I don't hear enough people talk about really is the difference between the risk that you think you can take and the risk that you can actually afford to take.
So in that situation, I would advise such a person who is not able to assess his risk appetite to seek advice. Very often we think that we can put up with loss, or we will not expect that loss, and the loss will not happen, and when it happens, really it comes down like a thunder. So you need to talk to someone who is good in the field of assessing your risk appetite.
You can't do this on your own?
No, well, you can if you're, experienced enough, or if you're educated enough, you will be able to do much of it. But I would personally will go to a financial advisor or financial planner, sit down with him and talk about this, all right, and see what sort of advice I get.
I thought financial planners were for people who are already in their 30s.
There are financial planners who are already in their 30s, and there are financial planners who are already in their 50s.
No, I mean their customers.
Oh, the customers.
You need to already have a house, you already need to be married and all those things.
No, not really. I mean, I met a young lady the other day, and she's a medical, she's a doctor, and she's been working for 3 years, and she hasn't started investing, right? And she spoke with me and said, what must I do? I have no inkling about investing. How much money do you have? Oh, $50,000. And I want to obviously talk about, think about making it, much more for my, the purpose of my investing is to really on my own buy a house, or I'll be able to, multiply it and buy a house. And then when I get married, I have to make sure that I'll be able to do the same thing. And she's interested in properties, all right, so that's fine. And she said, in order to buy the property, I need to get the returns that I need to get, and therefore what are the instruments, which are the investments I should be considering. So my advice to her was, if you do not have the time, because she is working into the wee hours of the night, she gets very little sleep sometimes, so she needs to see a financial planner.
Can we do without investing? Can't we just say, oh, okay, well, I'm still young, I don't yet have a house, don't yet have a car, don't have a girlfriend/boyfriend, therefore, the prospect of having a house is also still remote. I'll just keep earning my starting salary and spending it in the pub.
Very, very frightening thought, because that's what happened to me.
Really?
I was one of those who was buying cars and was buying the best of, suits and trousers and shirts and traveling and never.
Were the investments though?
Oh well, they're short-term investments. They dissipate very fast. But I was fortunate that I had a wife who was far-sighted and who put her money in property.
I see.
And persuaded me to buy a house on government loan. And that was then 98,000 in 1973. In 1988 became $500,000. Singapore, fortunately, this is Singapore Inc. All right. And that helped my boys to go to universities and study. And we did that in Australia. But not all are lucky. I was very lucky to have a woman who had the far side. But
who pulled you into line.
That's right.
Well, most of the people watching were probably born in 1973, to be honest.
Right.
So does that mean, and it might be a little bit hard to kind of get your head around this idea that, one day we will all be in your position where you've retired from your career rather than you're just getting into it.
That's right.
You've already made those acquisitions rather than still having them. You've put children through university compared to many people watching who may have just been fresh out of university themselves.
Yes.
So what can you say to help people people who are watching to kind of get themselves into that zone of thinking?
You've got to grow your wealth. How do you do that? You can't do that by keeping money in the bank or under the pillow. You've got to invest. And to invest, you need knowledge. You need to study investments. And you've got to study the risks involved in these investments. You've got to study, first of all, study yourself. All right? And you know that you can take a certain amount of risk in each of these instruments. You know that you need to spread your risk. You need to therefore diversify your investments, all right, so that your risk will be reduced, all right. And then you've got to stay invested, whether in properties, whether in stocks, and whether there are other instruments. That's, the highly risky products are the structured products, all right. Then you have a bit of, I was listening to Mr. Gloom and Doom the other day.
Mark Farber.
And he was asked on Australian television, look, Mark, we need to tell our viewers what to do in these circumstances. And he said, what would you do? And he said, I would put 25% on gold, 25% on stocks, 25% on deposits, and 25% I think on property. All right, now, you got the money, he's got the money, he can do that now, but you haven't got the money, you're just a young man just starting to work, systematically save first. You got to have a saving habit, all right? I was of the impression that CPF was enough. So I wasn't really saving much. My wife was saving, but I wasn't. CPF was enough. CPF wasn't enough. At 55, I had a rude shock. They sent me a check for $100,000.
But you were a magistrate. You were an accomplished lawyer.
And you know, I was a lawyer in the government service, but largely, and not so long in private practice, making a lot of money, but as a government servant, your CPF was only 6%.
As opposed to the 12 or so percent that it is today.
15%. But even then, the saving habit wasn't there for a long time. All right? But let me tell you, you can start saving later like me. I did start saving in the 50s. Now I'm in my late 60s. All right? Fair amount of money have been saved. But the point is, if you start young, you will not regret